welcome to our party. I first laid eyes on this piano for a few hours, maybe a day, when I was 9. And I thought, in the articulate way of 9-year-olds, I thought, I didn't know then about the power of music in my life. I didn't know about learning from period instruments about the music of their time. I hadn't yet fully absorbed from my dad in his workshop in the cellar the particular joy that he has and that I now share in tools, hand tools, which are beautiful objects that you use to make beautiful objects. It has a mathematical elegance and an incredible efficiency about it. The piano was not playable. I met it again for a day or two every decade or so, and it was never playable. It was like a present, still wrapped, unopened, that I didn't know what was inside, really. And in the last decade, I tried very hard to do a bunch of things, which would have included restoring the piano and using it for artistic purposes. When the house that it was in was sold in the summer of 2011 and dismantled and emptied, I took one of the biggest gambles of my life, which was to rescue this piano from an uncertain fate. Because the fact is that with something like this, you don't know whether it's going to be worth restoring until you've paid to restore it. So I said, one way or another, I'm going to unwrap this gift and see what's inside. But the gift isn't really the piano. The gift is the music that it helps me learn about. It was restored by the finest restorer in Europe, who built the most gorgeous crate you've ever seen and put it on an airplane and sent it over here. It was in Italy before that. And it arrived 1 year ago last week in this mansion, in exquisite condition, completely playable. It blew my mind. I played it for 10 minutes, and I left the country for 6 weeks. When I came back, it had experienced its first New England sweltering dog days summer. And it was not playable. And then it experienced its first cold, dry, overheated northeastern winter, and it was not playable. For the sake of the instrument itself, it is going to another home, which will be more climate controlled. This whole mansion needs to be climate controlled. That's why you have to donate to their capital fund. But in the meantime, this is going to go out of my hands after all these years to a place where it can breathe and sing. And I was hesitating and hesitating over that maneuver because there was something the matter with the whole idea, and finally it hit me that what was the matter with this whole idea was that I had never gotten to play it. So that's the part of the gift that we're unwrapping today, just for today. Let's make the music that it's making possible for us.
Actually, the question that I'm often asked is, what is a fortepiano and how does it differ from piano? Actually, the word piano just means soft. Fortepiano means loud, soft. And what distinguished the piano, which was invented around the year 1700, from the harpsichord, which preceded it, was the fact that the piano could play loud and soft, and in gradations, whereas the harpsichord basically was stuck. It had these terraced dynamics, depending on how many registers you engaged. So the piano was a more expressive instrument, an expressive instrument like the violin, or the flute, or horn, and so on, where you had control over dynamics. So when you use the word piano, it's really a silly term, because it's only one half of the true term, fortepiano. In the English-speaking countries, they tended to call it the pianoforte, and for some reason, in German-speaking countries, use the fortepiano. And this instrument here, which is, the date was found inside 1829, This is kind of the end of the fortepiano era, which began maybe around 1770 or so, during Mozart's time. This piano was made about 2 years after Beethoven's death, but this is the kind of piano that Beethoven, Schubert, Schumann, Mendelssohn, and even Brahms was familiar with. And it differs from the modern piano in that it has a completely wooden frame. It doesn't have the cast iron frame of the modern piano. The modern piano, grand piano, weighs about 800 pounds and has a 300-pound cast iron frame in it, and it supports about 40,000 pounds of string tension, enormous amount of string tension, just sitting there in your living room. It's like several Mack trucks just hanging off the edge of the piano. Whereas this has much lighter strings, thinner strings, and it's maybe about 6,000 to 7,000 pounds of tension, but it's all borne by a completely wooden case. One of the issues with the wooden case was that it's very susceptible to changes in temperature and humidity, and the instrument will go out of tune very, very quickly. I was asked by the pianist whether such pianos, how often were they tuned back in the day when they were made, and I did some research on that, and basically the makers of these pianos, many of them published little maintenance manuals for the owners, and they advocated basically at least 4 tunings a year, but they indicated that those tunings would not be adequate to keep an instrument like this in tune, and that in a matter of 1 day, the instrument would certainly be out of tune already. So, and even in this room where the temperature is rising as we sit here, the piano is reacting to it. So it's very much a living object, and it's breathing and swelling and contracting and so on. So another difference between this piano and the modern piano is the mechanism inside, the hammer mechanism. This has what is known as a Viennese action, which consists of, you have the key lever, which extends as far back, from the playing end to about this part of the case. And then there's a hammer, which is pivoted from something called a capsule, which is like a little metal fork that holds the hammer. And the hammer itself is very, very light. It has maybe 3 or 4 layers of leather on it, very soft deer skin or something like that, as opposed to the modern piano hammer, which is a big, heavy felt hammer that weighs a lot. And the touch weight of this is literally half of the modern piano. But the modern piano can exert much greater force than you can on this piano. So even though the touch weight is half, it's not 10 times different, but you can exert an enormous amount of forearm action on a modern piano, whereas you have to be more delicate with an instrument like this. It just won't respond. The other aspect of this fortepiano is the fact that it doesn't have the overstrung scaling. It uses basically plain brass wire for the bass strings rather than the big, heavy, overspun strings that you find in the modern piano. And that's about it. This maker, Zierer, Anton Zierer, he had a son who was also a maker. We don't know too much about him. We think he was born in Alsace because his wife was Alsatian. And, but he came to Vienna around 1816 or so, and worked until the 1835. Even his death date is not precisely known. He didn't make a will, evidently. And his son also carried on the business. Actually, his son predeceased him. So it's 1828, his son died, but also a maker of pianos. I had another question from the pianist. What did it cost to tune a piano back in the day when this was? And I found that out. It was 30 Kreutzer. And basically, there were 60 Kreutzer in a, what's the other measure? In a florin. And at that time, a piano would cost about anywhere between 250 and 500 florins. So you can do the math. And basically, the proportion of the cost of a tuning to the cost of a concert piano was about the same then as it is today. Modern Steinway concert grand is about $120,000, and a concert tuning is maybe $200 or so. So So it's about similar proportion. Do you have any other questions?
Well, I have lots more questions, but
maybe afterwards. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
This is Makiko's turn. I told you, I alluded to what I wanted the most out of this experience, which was that when I started to sing songs with this piano that I've known for a long time, or new songs, the piano showed me things about how it has to go, which is different from how it goes on a modern piano. And I'm not even a pianist. Makiko is. So what have you learned, and can you demonstrate this instrument for us in a way that, without any distraction?
Well, would you like to hear it first by itself, maybe? Okay. I will play a piece by Schubert, who died a year before this piano was made, but like Stewart said, this would have been the piano this was written for. of people that cared so much to make it happen. But for this piano to be here today, I mean, first somebody had to build it all by hands, and then for Marcella to restore it, and for Stewart to come in and help it so that it was playable today, and for you all to be here, and for us to experience this together. It's just, in this house, built in 1765, it's all just so moving to me. And I would like to thank Marcella, because I am not a forte pianist. There are people who specialize in playing period instruments, historical instruments, and I am not one of them. I play almost exclusively modern piano. My teacher happens to be a forte piano specialist, and he's taught me a lot, but this is not what I do. But Marcella, what she wanted to do with this instrument and what it will be doing in Oberlin is to expose a modern day pianist like me, modern pianist like me, to experience it so that we can be better informed and inspired about the pieces that we play, Schubert, Beethoven, Brahms. And this process of putting this concert together, rehearsing, has been a great journey of discovery for me. Different registers mean completely different things when played on this instrument as opposed to a Steinway, for example. You heard, it just rings so differently. And also figures like, you heard some in Berlioz, repeated notes. Okay, it's a completely different sound world. And I thought I knew Schubert. It is less in terms of dynamic range and in terms of the length of sustain. Oh, this was another question that I wanted to ask you, Stewart. So, I mean, we don't feel this. I don't feel this so much because, I mean, really, realistically speaking, the sustain is shorter on this piano than it is on a Steinway, for example. But because the attack is so gentle, not so much an attack, but just an enunciation kind of. So the sustain feels like it's longer. But in actuality, what's the difference between the modern piano and...
Well, it's hard to say because it differs throughout the range. Obviously, the bass notes sustain for a longer period of time. The treble of these Fortepiano, actually the sustain, the sound dies away very quickly. Yeah. And where the modern piano is better sustained than the treble. So.
Yeah, but a lot of what, for example, Schubert I'm discovering in Beethoven does to compensate for the lack of, for example, sustain and dynamic range and things like this, I'm slowly discovering. And the other thing is that when I'm playing this instrument, I feel like I'm talking to you. Whereas when I play a Steinway, it's almost like making a speech. Because the sustain is so long, I have to take time to do things, and because it's so loud, my gestures become much more dramatic, whereas on this, it's a lot more intimate, a lot more maybe genuine.
You showed me that how much easier, for example, Erlkönig would have been.
Oh, yes, okay.
And the speed.
Yes, okay. So for example, this is supposed to be a very difficult thing, and it is on a Steinway. It is. I mean, it's a physical challenge. But, you know, on this piano, it's not really a problem. I mean, we measured it actually before you came in, how much lighter these keys are with Stewart. And we were surprised that it's only half. I felt like it was maybe a tenth or maybe even less. It almost feels like playing air. So playing something like this on a Steinway, it's like a finger exercise. You have to move your fingers. But on this, it's just natural. It just comes out. Your finger just flies. Perfect. Anyway, and the other thing is that when Steinway is built for large holes, but these weren't And Steinway, I think, had solo repertoire in mind. I keep saying Steinway, I mean modern pianos. Steinway is the piano I most often play. But these instruments, when I play with, for example, Marcella, or for example, Carl, or I heard string players play with these types of pianos, and the sounds meld so well. On a modern piano, you have to do so much to control the sound, and just because it's so easy to overpower everyone else. But on this, you can just let go, and it is just fun. Anyway, thank you very much, Marcella.
Ständchen, the Serenade, is one of the songs that was known here very soon after Schubert's death. And it's one of the songs that was a real discovery for us. Can you show us how carrying over from a modern piano had us begin our work with this song?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because with the richer, fuller action of the modern piano, people draw this out and it gets very sort of violin-esque, and this was how we started. And this is what we think is Schubert's version. All right, I have to do some practice. Leise fliehen meine Lieder durch die Nacht zu dir. In den stillen Heilen Liebchen, komm zu mir. Flüstern schlanken Wipfelrauschen in des Mondes Licht, in des Mondes Licht. Des Verräters feindlich Lauschen fehlt der Holde nicht, fehlt der Holde nicht. Ist die Nacht, die kleinen Schnallen, ach, sie fliehen dich. Mit der Töne süßer Klagen fliehen sie für dich. Sie verstehen